Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, today I want to speak to your destiny. Not your emotions, not your friendships, not even your comfort zone. I came to speak to the seed of greatness buried inside of you. And the title of this message is simple but sobering. Cut them off. God will elevate you alone. Let me begin by declaring this truth. God never promotes a crowd. He promotes an individual. He speaks to a person. He separates a man. He isolates a woman. He calls one, not many, because your destiny is too critical to be a group project. Now listen carefully. Before elevation comes separation. You must leave in order to arrive. You must disconnect in order to be reconnected to the mind of God. Look at Abraham. God said, leave your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. Did you catch that? Leave. Why? Because God could not show him the future until he let go of his familiar. Some of you are holding on to people God already released you from. And you're wondering why you feel stuck. You will never walk into the land God has promised while dragging people he never assigned. There are some people who are not bad, but they are bad for where you're going. They are not evil, but they are irrelevant. And until you learn to cut them off, not in hatred, not in arrogance, but in obedience, you will delay the elevation God designed for you. See, many of us are loyal to history at the cost of destiny. But let me remind you, God doesn't anoint comfort zones. He anoints callings. And callings require clarity. And clarity comes through consecration. God will often isolate you before he elevates you. And that isolation may feel like rejection, but it's actually protection. Ask Joseph. He was thrown in a pit, sold by his brothers, falsely accused, imprisoned, and yet he was exactly where God needed him to be. Why? Because God had to remove him from a dysfunctional environment to develop him into a deliverer. Joseph didn't rise because of his connections. He rose because of his calling. Hear me. There are some doors that will only open when you're alone. Not because God is trying to punish you, but because he's trying to prove you. Elevation is not given. It's earned through testing, separation, and surrender. You must be willing to walk alone, cry alone, pray alone, and rise alone. Because the weight of destiny is not designed for community consensus. It is tailored for divine confidence. And don't worry, those who left you, those who betrayed you, those who misunderstood you, they were necessary. But they were never meant to stay. Jesus had to walk with Judas before he could sit at the right hand of the Father. But even Jesus said, what you must do, do quickly. He let Judas go because destiny demanded it. You will never wear the crown until you lay down the crown. My friend, elevation is coming, but it will not come with company. God is not calling you to be popular. He is calling you to be purposeful. So cut them off, not with bitterness, but with boldness. Cut them off. Not because they are beneath you, but because they are not assigned to your future. And when you do, God will elevate you alone. Because the anointing always falls in isolation before it is revealed in public. May you have the courage to let go so that heaven can release what you were born to carry. Separation precedes elevation. This is not just a principle, it is a pattern, a divine strategy seen all throughout Scripture and echoed in the lives of those who walk in purpose. Before God lifts you up, He first pulls you away. He detaches you from the familiar, from the crowd, from the noise, from everything that would keep you dependent on others instead of dependent on Him. Separation is not punishment, it is preparation. It's God's way of saying, what I'm about to do in your life cannot be done with everyone around you. I need to isolate you to incubate what I've placed inside of you. And God has a unique assignment for you. He does not begin with promotion. He begins with pruning. He cuts back. He removes. He hides you, because exposure without preparation is dangerous. And many people want the stage, but they don't want the separation. They want the reward, but they resist the refinement. But God will not elevate anyone who is not first processed in private. Look at Moses. Before he could lead Israel, he spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep, separated from Pharaoh's palace, from prestige, from identity. God stripped him of what he thought qualified him so that he could become who God had actually called him to be. David was anointed in front of his brothers, yes, but he was developed in the field alone with sheep, away from applause, away from approval, away from noise. That solitude was not a setback, it was a set up. It was in the field that he learned how to kill the lion and the bear. It was in the field he learned how to worship, how to hear God, how to fight battles in silence. Separation forces you to confront yourself. When no one is cheering, no one is clapping, and no one is calling, you discover who you really are. You learn to hear God without filters. You stop leaning on people for validation and start leaning on God for direction. It is in that space where you feel hidden, forgotten, even misunderstood, that God is doing His deepest work. But hear this clearly. The same God who calls you out is the God who will lift you up. Separation is never the end. It is the beginning of elevation. When God isolates you, He is preparing to introduce you. He is building a foundation that no storm can shake. He is removing relationships that will corrupt your calling. He is stripping away voices that will drown out His. And when the time is right, when the character is forged, when the heart is purified, when the vision is clear, then and only then will He elevate you to the place He promised. You don't need everyone's support when you have God's strategy. So if you're in a season of isolation, don't resist it. Embrace it. Let it do its work. Because before God gives you the platform, He builds you in private. Before you are revealed, you must be refined. Before elevation, there must be separation. Not everyone can go where God is taking you. As difficult as it may be to accept, this is a truth that every person of destiny must come to terms with. The path God has laid out for your life is not a public highway. It is a narrow road. It is a road designed with divine precision, one that often requires shedding the weight of unnecessary relationships, misplaced loyalties, and emotional attachments that no longer serve your assignment. Some people were meant to be part of your journey, but not part of your destination. They are those who were essential in one season, but become a hindrance in the next. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It simply means their role in your life was temporary. God is a God of purpose, and he assigns people according to seasons. When the season changes, so must the circle. If you try to take everyone with you into a place God reserved for you alone, you risk compromising the very promise he gave you. You risk compromising the very promise he gave you. It's not about being better than others. It's about being obedient to the blueprint God has for your life. Jesus had 12 disciples, but he only took 3 to the mountain of transfiguration. And when he went to the cross, even the 3 could not go. There are places in your spiritual development, in your calling, in your elevation, where no one else is allowed. There are certain revelations God will give you that can't be shared prematurely because others may not have the capacity to understand or steward what God is showing you. Sure or not, what is sacred to you may be common to them. And that's a risk you can't afford when your future is on the line. Trying to drag people into a season they were never prepared for will only create unnecessary weight. They won't understand your discipline, your sacrifice, your urgency, or your boundaries. And if you're not careful, you'll start compromising your values just to maintain company. You'll begin shrinking your vision to keep people comfortable. But vision must never be negotiated for companionship. Assignment must never bow to attachment. God is calling you higher. And elevation demands separation. He's calling you into spaces of clarity, focus, and refinement. Not everyone has the stamina to climb with you. Some were content with the valley while you were built for the mountain. And if you keep waiting for them to catch up, you'll end up stuck between obedience and sentiment, between purpose and people. But destiny does not wait on permission. It requires movement, even if that means moving alone. And God starts to show you glimpses of where he's taking you. It's not to impress others. It's to prepare you. Some people won't celebrate you when you begin to shift. They'll accuse you of changing, of being distant, of thinking you're better. But the truth is, you're not changing to impress. You're transforming to obey. You're not leaving them behind out of pride. You're stepping forward out of purpose. And understand this, those who are truly assigned to your life will grow with you. You won't need to force them. They will evolve naturally. But for those who can't or won't grow, let them go in peace. Release them with love. You're not abandoning them. You're aligning with God. Because where he's taking you requires a version of you they may not recognize. And if they can't honor the calling, they can't stay for the elevation. So don't apologize for moving forward. Don't apologize for obeying the whisper of God. Not everyone can go where God is taking you. And that's how you know the place he's taking you is sacred. Clinging to the wrong people can delay destiny. Sometimes it's not the devil that's holding you back. It's your refusal to let go of the people God has already removed his hand from. There are individuals who were part of your past but have no role in your future. And the longer you hold on to them, the longer you postpone what God has already prepared for you. Destiny has a pace. It moves according to divine timing. And when you're yoked to someone who isn't aligned with God's direction for your life, it creates drag. It creates friction. It causes delay. You can't walk into a new season while dragging the baggage of old alliances. There are people who are emotionally comfortable but spiritually costly. They feed your history but they starve your future. They agree with your brokenness but resist your healing. And if you're not careful, their presence becomes a stronghold, a false sense of loyalty that God never required of you. Sometimes the greatest test of obedience is not leaving sin, but leaving company that feels safe. In the Bible, Lot's wife looked back, not because of the city, but because of a tie she had within it. She couldn't let go. And her inability to release the past caused her to forfeit her future. That's what happens when we cling to people who are not assigned to our next level. We become stuck in a moment that God has already moved on from. You cannot carry divine purpose and dead weight at the same time. Some people were only meant to be passengers for part of the journey. They came to teach you something, to show you something, to expose something. But once that lesson is learned, their time is up. And yet, because of emotional attachment, fear of being alone, or guilt, we keep them around, hoping they'll transform into something they were never called to be. That's dangerous. Because delayed obedience becomes disobedience, and prolonged disobedience leads to wasted years. When you cling to the wrong people, your discernment becomes clouded. You stop hearing God clearly because you're filtering his voice through the opinions of others. You start hesitating on divine instructions because you worry about reactions instead of obedience. And slowly the fire of your calling dims, not because you weren't chosen, but because you refused to choose correctly. Destiny requires courage. Courage to let go of what's familiar. Courage to walk alone if necessary. Courage to trust that what God has ahead of you is better than what you're afraid to leave behind. Clinging to the wrong people creates delays, detours, and distractions. It attaches you to cycles that God broke off long ago. And it keeps you small when you were called to expand. God is trying to accelerate you, but you're anchored to people who don't see what you see, who don't hear what you hear, who don't believe like you believe. And no matter how much potential you carry, as long as you're tied to those who are out of alignment with your purpose, your destiny will always be under pressure. Letting go isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the decision to choose calling over comfort, obedience over opinion, and purpose over people-pleasing. The sooner you release what God never intended you to cling to, the sooner you'll step into everything he's already prepared for you. Destiny doesn't wait forever. It's time to stop holding on to what's holding you back. Divine isolation is not rejection, it's preparation. What feels like abandonment is often alignment. When God sets you apart, it may seem like everyone is walking away, like the doors are closing, like the phone stops ringing, and like the support you once had suddenly disappears. But that silence is not punishment, it's strategy. God isolates those he intends to use greatly. He pulls you away from the noise so you can hear his voice more clearly. He removes the crowd so you stop relying on applause and start depending on assignment. Isolation is the sacred place where God does his deepest work. It is where character is formed, vision is clarified, and identity is restored. It's in that quiet, hidden place that you discover who you are, without titles, without affirmation, without public recognition. Because before God reveals you, he refines you. And refinement doesn't happen in the spotlight, it happens in solitude. Think of Elijah. After calling down fire from heaven, he found himself alone, hidden in a cave. It wasn't because God had forgotten him. It was because God needed to whisper something into his spirit that the crowd could never confirm. God doesn't waste wilderness seasons. In fact, some of your most powerful growth happens when nobody is watching. Jesus himself, before launching his ministry, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. Not by the enemy, but by God. The wilderness was not punishment. It was preparation. In isolation, Jesus fasted, prayed, overcame temptation, and emerged with clarity and authority. The wilderness tested what had been planted in him. And until you pass the test in isolation, you won't be trusted with influence in public. So when you find yourself in that lonely place, don't resent it. Don't assume God has walked away. That isolation is intentional. It is a divine appointment. God is cutting off the voices you used to run to so that you will run only to him. He's stripping away distractions, reshaping your thinking, stretching your faith, and sharpening your obedience. You may feel unseen, but heaven is watching. You may feel forgotten, but you are being forged. The caterpillar is never more vulnerable than when it's in the cocoon. Isolated, wrapped up, hidden. But in that hidden place, transformation is taking place. Wings are being formed, and when it emerges, it doesn't look like what it used to be. That's what divine isolation does. It transforms you so completely that when God brings you out, people can't even recognize the version of you that went in. God never isolates you to leave you. He isolates you to elevate you. He sets you apart to set you up. What he's building in you requires focus. What he's calling you to carry demands weight. And before he puts you in the room, he will first put you through the process. That process is sacred. Don't rush it. Don't resent it. Embrace it. Divine isolation is not God turning his back on you. It's God turning you toward himself. Because where you're going, you'll need more than charisma. You need character. You need depth. You need conviction. And those are not built in crowds. They're built in the secret place. So stand still in the solitude. Let God finish what he started. He's not rejecting you. He's preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. God removes to make room. When something or someone is taken out of your life, it's not always because of failure, betrayal, or loss. Sometimes it's because God is clearing the space for something greater, deeper, and more aligned with his will for your life. What feels like subtraction is often preparation for multiplication. What looks like loss is often divine editing, removing characters that no longer fit the next chapter of your story. We often pray for increase, for promotion, for open doors, but we forget that increase requires space. You cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. You cannot step into a new season while holding on to expired assignments. When God begins to remove things, it's not always because you've done something wrong. It could be that you've outgrown the place, the relationship, the environment, and what used to fit no longer does. God is intentional. He doesn't waste movement. Every removal has purpose behind it. Sometimes he removes people who would have slowed your progress. Sometimes he removes opportunities that would have distracted you from your true calling. Sometimes he shuts doors not to punish you, but to protect you from walking into something beneath your potential. Sometimes he removes people, and yet the process of removal is painful. It stretches your heart. It tests your trust. It forces you to confront your dependency on things that were only meant to be temporary. But if you allow yourself to grieve what's gone without losing sight of what's coming, you will begin to see the wisdom of his ways. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What you thought was the end was simply God clearing the stage for a better beginning. Remember Gideon? He had 32,000 men ready to fight, but God said, too many. He reduced his army to 300, not because God wanted him to fail, but because he wanted the victory to be unmistakably his. Sometimes God will strip you down to what looks like nothing just to show you that he is more than enough. He'll remove your plan so he can reveal his. He'll remove your crutches so you learn to walk in faith. When God removes, he is making room for clarity, for strength, for deeper intimacy with him. He is rearranging things so that your life is no longer cluttered with distractions, compromises, and counterfeit blessings. He is pruning you so that you can bear more fruit. Not just any fruit, but lasting fruit. Don't fight the pruning. Don't mourn over what God has already released you from. If it left, it was not meant to stay. If it broke, it was not meant to be built upon. God knows what's ahead, and he knows what you need and what you don't. Trust that every removal is connected to his greater design for your life. Because before he gives you more, he makes room. And what he has in store is always worth what you had to release. Your assignment is too critical to be distracted. You weren't born to blend in. You were born with divine intention, crafted by the hand of God for a purpose that carries eternal weight. And because your assignment carries weight, your focus must carry discipline. Distraction is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it comes dressed as good opportunities, familiar relationships, comfortable routines, or even well-meaning voices. But anything that pulls you away from what God has called you to do is a threat to your destiny, no matter how harmless it seems. The enemy doesn't always destroy purpose with destruction. Often he simply delays it with distraction. If he can get you to disobey, he'll get you to detour. If he can't tempt you to fall, he'll tempt you to wander. A distracted heart loses clarity. A distracted mind loses momentum. And a distracted soul eventually forgets the urgency of its assignment. There is a timing to your calling, a window of impact that cannot be wasted. Trying to explain yourself to people who don't understand, or pleasing crowds who were never assigned to affirm you. Your time is too valuable to spend it entertaining drama, debating critics, or feeding insecurities. Purpose demands protection. It demands you guard your mind, your time, your relationships, and your vision. Look at Nehemiah. When the enemy tried to pull him down from the wall with lies and intimidation, his response was simple and powerful. I am doing a great work and I cannot calm down. That is the posture of purpose. That is the mindset of someone who knows the cost of distraction. Your calling may not be applauded and your discipline may not be understood, but your assignment is not up for negotiation. It is not casual. It is critical. There are souls connected to your obedience. There are generations that will be impacted by your faithfulness. You don't have the luxury of wasting energy on things that bear no fruit. Every moment spent off course is a moment lost in destiny. And while God is gracious, time is still precious. You must be ruthless with distractions. You must be bold in your focus, because heaven is watching And the earth is groaning for the manifestation of those who will rise without compromise. You don't need everyone to understand your path. You just need to walk it. You don't need every door to open, just the one God has marked for you. And when your eyes stay fixed on the one who sent you, every temptation to be distracted loses its power. Stay sharp, stay anchored, stay hidden if you must, but don't get sidetracked. Your assignment is too critical to entertain things that don't align. Too necessary to be slowed by the unnecessary. Too sacred to be shared with distractions. Keep building, keep pressing, keep going. Separation may be painful, but purpose is worth it. There is a cost to walking in what God has called you to do. And one of the first payments is often the people, places, and comforts you thought you couldn't live without. Purpose demands clarity, and clarity requires space. Space to hear God. Space to see differently. Space to become what you were created to be without the noise of familiar limitations. And to gain that space, sometimes God has to pull you away. The pain of separation is real. It's not just about losing connection. It's about letting go of identity attachments, emotional ties, and even unspoken expectations that were built in past seasons. It hurts to outgrow what once felt like home. It stings to feel misunderstood by people who once walked closely with you. It's hard to release what gave you comfort, even if it was keeping you small. But every great calling has a cost, and separation is part of that price. Abraham had to leave his father's house with no map, only a word from God. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and thrown into a pit before his dream could come to pass. Ruth had to walk away from everything familiar to step into a new lineage. Jesus himself often withdrew from the crowds and ultimately was separated from even his closest friends as he fulfilled his purpose on the cross. Separation has always been a marker of divine movement. Purpose doesn't unfold in comfort zones. It stretches you. It exposes you to moments of loneliness so you can become intimate with the voice of God. It strips you of dependency on affirmation. So your confidence is rooted in calling, not in company. It's in the place of separation that you refined, tested, and prepared. What God does in you during those silent seasons becomes the foundation for the impact you'll make later. You may not understand why certain people walked away. You may not know why doors suddenly shut. You may be questioning why your path feels narrow while others seem to walk freely. But purpose is not about popularity. It's about precision. God removes what cannot go with you, not because he's cruel, but because he's intentional. What you feel as pain, he sees as protection. What you call loss, he uses as leverage. He's making sure nothing contaminates the calling he placed on your life. You won't always get closure. You won't always have clean endings, but you will have purpose. And on the other side of the pain is a version of you that is stronger, clearer, wiser, and more in tune with heaven's direction. Separation may break your heart, but it won't break your destiny. In fact, it's often the very thing that unlocks it. You don't have to enjoy the process, but you do have to trust it. Because God never wastes the pain of separation. He uses it to carve out the path of your purpose. And when you see what he was preparing you for, the price you pay to walk away won't even compare to the glory he reveals through your life. God elevates individuals before he uses them to elevate others. Before he places you in a position to impact, influence, or lead, he first takes you through a process of refinement and transformation. God doesn't promote based on talent alone. He promotes based on capacity, obedience, and surrender. You cannot pour into others what has not first been developed within you. The oil that flows in public must be crushed in private. The weight of leadership, influence, or calling requires internal stability that only comes through personal elevation. Eventually, positions of power will be empty, and the best leaders. Before Joseph became governor of Egypt, he was processed through betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and prison. Each of those stages wasn't punishment, they were preparation. God was not just setting Joseph up to lead a nation. He was preparing him to carry wisdom, discernment, humility, and integrity under pressure. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, Joseph was not a boy with a dream. He was a man with divine authority, able to handle the very people who had once mishandled him. Elevation is not about platforms. It's about posture. It's about being raised in your thinking, matured in your spirit, and anchored in your identity so that when God does entrust you with people, resources, and influence, you steward it well. He elevates you privately before he reveals you publicly. That hidden season, that silent process, that uncomfortable growth is not in vain. It's where God is shaping the foundation of who you are so you can carry what he's about to release. Even Jesus spent 30 years in preparation for 3 years of public ministry. God elevated him in wisdom, favor, and maturity before he ever preached a sermon or performed a miracle. Why? Because the assignment was too great to be handled without internal depth. If Jesus required that much preparation, how much more do we? God will often isolate you, stretch you, challenge your character, and refine your motives, not to break you, but to build you. Because when he elevates a person, that elevation isn't just about their success. It becomes a platform for others to stand on. But if the person hasn't been elevated in mindset, in faith, in maturity, they will not elevate others. They will mislead them. God's elevation comes with responsibility. When you allow God to work on you first, when you let him elevate you in wisdom, in discernment, in clarity, you become a vessel through which others are lifted. Your life becomes a testimony. Your scars become strategies. Your process becomes someone else's permission to grow. But it starts with you. Before you lead others, God leads you. Before you carry a vision, God carries you. Before you become the answer to someone else's cry, he becomes your answer. So don't despise the process. Don't rush the private elevation. Don't get impatient when the crowd hasn't yet shown up. Because what God is doing in you is not just for you, it's for everyone he's going to reach through you. He lifts you so that your life can lift others. And when he's the one who does the lifting, no one can bring you down. You must trust God more than you trust people. People can be sincere, but still limited. They can love you, but still misunderstand your assignment. They can cheer for you one moment and doubt you the next. Human support is inconsistent. Not always out of malice, but simply because people are not sovereign. They see in part, understand in part, and often judge from the surface. But God sees the whole picture. He knows the end from the beginning. And when he speaks with complete knowledge of what he's destined for you. Trusting God above people doesn't mean you isolate yourself or reject community. It means you anchor your confidence in the one who never changes. It means that when people fall short, you don't fall apart. It means when support dries up, your purpose doesn't. It means when the voices around you grow silent, you lean in even deeper to the voice that called you in the first place. If your faith is tied to the approval of people, you'll constantly feel unstable. But when your trust is rooted in God, even rejection becomes redirection. There are moments in your journey where the very people you thought would support you won't understand why you're moving the way you are. And that's okay. Because your obedience doesn't require explanation, only confirmation. God never told Noah to wait for community consensus. He gave him a word, and that word was enough. Abraham didn't receive a group vote before stepping into the unknown. He moved because God said, move. When you truly trust God, you won't need validation to walk in your assignment. You just need his voice. People are part of the process, but they are not the source. God is the source. And when you begin to elevate his voice above every other voice, even your own, your life aligns with purpose in a way that can't be manipulated or derailed. Trust in God means believing his plan, even when it doesn't make sense. It means saying yes when logic says wait. It means moving forward when others say stay behind. Because God isn't bound by what people see. He's working with what he knows. When people disappoint you, God remains faithful. When people walk away, God stays. When people change, God remains constant. Your ability to fulfill destiny is not contingent on human agreement. It's contingent on divine direction. And sometimes God will strip you of your reliance on people, not to leave you empty, but to teach you that he is enough, that he is your security, your source of peace, your provider, your guide. Don't let the inconsistency of people cause you to question the consistency of God. Don't measure the weight of your calling by the size of your circle, and don't give more power to opinions than you do to obedience. God has never lied. He has never failed, and he will never lead you into anything that he hasn't already prepared a way through. So even when it's lonely, even when it's unclear, even when the applause fades, trust him. Trust that he sees what you can't. Trust that he knows what you need. Trust that his timing is perfect and his plan is bigger than you imagine. Because at the end of the day, people may support you, but only God can sustain you. The right environment fuels growth. Just like a seed needs the right soil, light, and conditions to reach its full potential, so do you. No matter how gifted, anointed, or called you are, if you remain planted in the wrong atmosphere, where you're constantly drained, doubted, or dishonored, you will struggle to grow. Purpose is not just about what's in you, it's also about where you're planted. Because potential means nothing without the right environment to unlock it. God often calls people to shift environments, not because the old place was evil, but because it became too small. Growth demands space, challenge, and nourishment. If you're in a place where your spirit is constantly being starved, your vision is being questioned, and your voice is being silenced, it's only a matter of time before frustration sets in, and frustration is often a sign that it's time to move. Not to quit, but to reposition. Sometimes the environments we cling to are connected to comfort or familiarity, not purpose. And if you're not careful, you can outstay your season. Remaining in a place that once served you but is now stunting you, just because it was right for a season, doesn't mean it's right for your future. What once fed you can begin to drain you when God is calling you to more. The right environment speaks to your spirit. It challenges your thinking. It calls you higher. It supports your assignment, not just your personality. It doesn't just tolerate your gift, it makes room for it. It doesn't just celebrate your wins, it corrects, sharpens, and aligns you with destiny. And while no environment is perfect, the right one for you will always push you toward purpose, not pull you away from it. Even Jesus had to remove certain people from the room before performing miracles, not because he was limited, but because he understood the power of atmosphere. Doubt, dishonor, and spiritual resistance can create barriers to break through. You have to be discerning about where you invest your time, your energy, and your voice, because environment either waters your calling or withers it. Growth requires conditions that allow roots to go deep and branches to stretch wide. And sometimes that means walking away from places that once felt like home in order to step into environments that feel unfamiliar but are fertile. You are never called to remain buried. You were called to rise. But you can rise in places that were designed to keep you small. Pay attention to the fruit in your life. If your joy is shrinking, if your clarity is fading, if your passion is dimming, ask yourself, is this the right environment for the person I'm becoming? God's not just calling you to survive, he's calling you to flourish. And flourishing is always tied to being rightly planted. When you find that place where your spirit is fed, your gift is respected, your faith is stretched, and your identity is affirmed, growth becomes inevitable. So hear this. When God calls you higher, he's not asking for your permission. He's requiring your obedience. The places, people, and patterns that once carried you may no longer be equipped to sustain you in the next season. And though it may hurt to separate, though it may sting to be misunderstood, your destiny demands it. You cannot fulfill a heavenly calling with earthly attachments weighing you down. Division. You must trust God more than your comfort, more than your emotions, and certainly more than the opinions of others. This is your moment to release the unnecessary, to cut off what no longer aligns, and to stand in faith as God elevates you, alone if necessary. Because true elevation is never about popularity. It's about alignment with purpose. You weren't designed to fit in. You were chosen to break through. And sometimes God has to isolate you before he launches you. Sometimes he strips everything familiar so all that remains is him. And that's where power begins. Don't fear the separation. Don't mourn the pruning. Rejoice that God saw something in you worth refining. You are not being rejected. You are being resurrected. And where he's taking you, not everyone can follow. Let them go, cut it off, walk forward. Because when God is all you have, you'll realize he's all you need. And he's more than enough to take you into your next, fully elevated, fully equipped, and completely unstoppable.